The NFC North was without a doubt the best division in the NFL all season. The final game of the regular season being the Vikings at the Lions is a perfect example and a good push for new seeding rules. Arguably the biggest game in NFC North history. 14-2 teams facing off to win the division and win the conference to get a bye. The North was no joke, with two of the best, and the Packers right there behind with a 11-win season too. The third best team in the division had 11 wins. That is absurd. The Bears didn't help the cause with a 5-12 season that included a 10-game losing streak, but even Chicago had high expectations. It has been a pretty great 2-year stretch for the NFC North now. For so long, the Lions were a joke, but really ended that way of thinking last year. Detroit went 12-5 and didn't only make the postseason, but got hot and rattled off 2 wins. The Lions beat the Rams and Matthew Stafford in the wild card before taking down the Buccaneers to get to the NFC Championship. The Packers were the other NFC North team to make the playoffs. Green Bay beat the Cowboys in the wild card. Now, it was a down year for the Vikings, but that was because of Kirk Cousins tearing his Achilles. If he stays healthy, who knows what would have happened. Kirk was playing well, and in 2022, Minnesota went 13-4 and won the division. Now, with a healthy Sam Darnold, the Vikings are right back. It really only leaves the Bears to underperform. Chicago last won a playoff game in 2010, and success isn't exactly on the horizon, and it isn't very easy when the rest of the division is stacked. The Lions have been a force, but it's been a bit messy at times. Detroit has dealt with an insane amount of injuries. Losing Aiden Hutchinson on the defensive side of the ball is the clear big one. He broke his tibia and fibula in week 6. He already had 7.5 sacks before he got hurt and had 11.5 last year. Then on offense, David Montgomery really stands out. He suffered an MCL injury in week 15 and hasn't practiced. It sounds like there is some sliver of hope for either Hutchinson or Montgomery to be healthy at some point if the Lions make a postseason run, but we'll see. Even with the big injuries that can easily derail a season, the Lions have kept strong. Detroit started 1-1 with an early loss to the Buccaneers, 20-16. Now, Tampa Bay isn't necessarily elite, but is good and did just win another NFC South title. It wasn't an incredible start, really, at least based on expectations. The Lions needed overtime to beat the Rams in week 1 and only beat the Cardinals by 1 score in week 3. Then Detroit hit a groove and won 11 straight games with a bye along the way. That is 12 straight weeks without losing. The only other loss on the season came to the Bills in an absolute shootout, 48-42. It was one of the better games of all season. Detroit is definitely legit. It's been 2 seasons where it's been clear. Dan Campbell seems to be a great head coach. He is a true leader and football guy, and it sure helps to have 2 of the best coordinators. Ben Johnson at offensive coordinator and Aaron Glenn at defensive coordinator is a heck of a 2-punch. Both are so good and could be head coaches very soon. The Lions were so bad for so long. It's a reason why they are so likable, but it's more than that. How could someone not root for Jared Goff? He was traded by the Rams, and the Lions wanted him in a trade. Goff is now a top quarterback in the NFC, has been really good for Detroit. It helps to have some really good weapons around him, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, a top NFL wide receiver. Jameson Williams finally had a breakout as the former number 12 pick in 2022. Sam Laporta has been a reliable, good tight end. Jahmyr Gibbs is a beast at running back. The offensive line has impressed, thanks to really the whole 5. As for defense, Detroit, I just think, has drafted really well there. You know, they've had some important signings like defensive end Zadarius Smith and defensive tackle DJ Reader, but the drafting, Brian Branch, Terrion Arnold at cornerback, Kirby Joseph at safety, Jack Campbell at linebacker, all stand out. Detroit is scary, and it was hard to think that anyone in the NFC North could compete so closely before the season, but the Vikings have answered the call. Minnesota was in a really weird spot coming into the season. For so long, Kirk Cousins was the quarterback, but the Vikings let him walk and had to completely reset at at the position. The Vikings did draft JJ McCarthy high at number 10. It felt like he would start at some point, but he tore his meniscus in the preseason. Luckily, he wasn't the only quarterback the Vikings brought in. Minnesota signed Sam Darnold. He was once a number 3 pick, but it was to the Jets. Then he played for the Panthers, and he backed up Brock Purdy for the 49ers. Darnold never looked elite as a pro. That was until he started playing for Kevin O'Connell. KOC has done a great job in Minnesota, and Darnold is another example. It was easily the best season of his career and gives the Vikings a tough decision to make for next season at quarterback. The Vikings offense has been so fun to watch. Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison is good. TJ Hawkinson came back from injury, and Aaron Jones has been an incredible signing. The defense has some notable guys like Harrison Smith, Byron Murphy, Shaquille Griffin, 34-year-old Stephon Gilmore. There are some dudes, but Brian Flores is incredible. He is the guy to credit mostly. He is another coordinator who could get a head coach job. Now, the Lions were expected to be great, but the Vikings were a surprise. Minnesota started 5-0 and then had a bye and lost back-to-back, including 31-29 to Detroit. The Vikings lost to the Rams the next week too, and then rallied off 9 straight to sit at 14-2 before another face-off against Detroit for the NFC North Championship. It's hard to play at Ford Field, but the Vikings did try to make it a little easier. The Vikings bought $2 million worth of tickets on the secondary market and sold the tickets to season ticket holders way cheaper. Technically not against the rules, but it shows how important Week 18 under the lights on Sunday Night Football was to Minnesota and Detroit. With all the deserved hype for the Lions and Vikings, it's easy for Green Bay to get swept under the rug, but the Packers were good too. Jordan Love has really proven himself, and even when he was out, the Packers kept winning with Malik Willis. Josh Jacobs was an incredible pickup at running back, and the young group of wide receivers continues to improve, but Jaden Reed definitely is the number 1 target. The defense has some dudes. The defensive line of Lucas Van Ness and Rashawn Gary off the edge with Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt sticks out. Green Bay did sign Xavier McKinney at safety, but unfortunately lost Jair Alexander to a PCL tear. Green Bay was 11-4 before dropping its last 2 games to the Vikings and Bears. The Packers lost to the Lions and Vikings twice and split with the Bears. 1-5 in the division isn't ideal. The Eagles were the other loss. Green Bay still got the number 7 seed in the NFC and has to face Philadelphia in the wild card. It was definitely still a very successful season, and it's not over. The Bears season is over and didn't exactly go to plan. Chicago had pretty high expectations. There was a lot of talk about how Caleb Williams was going to a perfect situation with good weapons and a good offensive line. The defense was supposed to be good. I remember hearing about how the Bears could threaten to win the NFC North, and that was a ridiculous thought. Caleb was still a rookie and didn't even play too well regardless. There are some good players around Caleb. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, all at wide receiver, DeAndre Swift at running back, and Cole Kmet at tight end. It should have been enough for a big improvement. Montez Sweat and Kevin Byard are some newer important guys playing with Jalen Johnson, not to mention spinning big on linebacker with TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. It all wasn't enough, and Matt Eberflus was fired. Thomas Brown has been the interim and will interview for the job, but I think Chicago would rather Ben Johnson or Cliff Kingsbury. The Bears might be heading in the right direction, but the rest of the NFC North are contenders. Even the Packers. The Lions and Vikings are 2 of the top teams in the NFL straight up. Either one could go on a postseason run, and same goes for Green Bay too. As it stands, the NFC North is by far the best division in the NFL, and it was very obvious this past season.